Right, we're recording. Alrighty, so many of you have seen this with the rawhide on, and the sinew has shrunk down a little bit. I might sand it to smooth it with some 320 grit, but there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of, what would you say, texture on the sinew. It really kind of brings it forth. And then I did this attempt just to show the even edge of rawhide. Only place where it slipped a little bit was right there on the handle. You see, this doesn't completely match up with this one, but it'll be under the handle wrap. I would call this, job of rawhide backing probably 98% perfect. The only part that I absolutely screwed up on was it's not perfect where that matches. That's the way I roll, and you can see the sharp spine down there? Nice detail. I've often toyed with the notion of carrying that sharp spine all the way down. Of course, it isn't a good idea from an engineering standpoint, because you're creating that ridge of high tension, that arête, that precipice, but the rawhide would cover that up. I actually got this idea of taking it from a rounded cross section to the traditional Boyer's Bibles. There's a picture of, it's actually a self bow. I believe it's some form of oak from the West Coast. Paddle bow. Yes, they had self bows too. Round, and then it was a recurve with that thing up there. If you followed me for any great period of time, you realize that I'm not so keen on recurving these paddle bows, because if you don't get everything set up, I mean absolutely perfect, on a wider limb bow, it doesn't work the same on a narrower bow, but a wider limb bow has a propensity to propeller twist. It's not absolutely perfect, and I don't feel that is extra feet per second is worth, the potential to get propeller twisting. You balance, it's compromise. The potential for greater speed with the potential for the bow is not what I want. It's easy. I've got a hunting story for you. The hunting story of all hunting stories for me. Let me adjust this thing here. There we go. Sorry, you have to see my ugly mug a little better. It's easy to take something like this, especially when I'm going to get the Raven design on there, and look upon it as an art piece, because it is an art piece, and lose, what is this? What is the purpose of this? In conjunction with, an arrow with a nice shiny sharp stone points. What is the purpose of this? And we know what the purpose of this is. If you have been a hunter from time to time, you know what this elegant device is for, what it's capable of. It's for causing the death of something else. And what we do is we put our mojo into these things. They are tools of death. They are. And I've been not hunting in the past 5 years or so, because my current wife is the type of person that names every creature that walks in, and so I've kind of, happy wife, happy life, and so I'm doing all right. I can fully admit that, it irks me if I come across somebody that eats meat and is anti-hunting. That irks me. I've always had the philosophy that if you are going to eat meat, you need to be honest enough to have looked that animal in the eye, or at least once in your life, and caused their demise. And many of us would do our own butchering and everything too. So it was from the beginnings, if you're fortunate enough to actually make the stuff that you used for that from beginning to end. You are acting as a responsible, independent human being, gathering your own food. It irks me on another level too, because if you eat meat and you're anti-hunting, you are necessarily for factory farm raised animals that are just living a horrible life of torture until they go into the killing room. And there is something better. I will be on my high horse. There's something much better about allowing animals to roam free, understand what it is to be a free animal, and then being cut down, and not just taking these modified creatures that were once wild, free animals, and then just raising them in cages and then killing them in terror. You know, from the beginning to the end, their lives are just a living hell. And so that is one reason. Anyway, I can say that hunters range widely in the whys and the hows. There are trophy hunters that would just go out there and kill an animal and cut the top of their skull off just to get antlers. I do not like that. That irks me to no great end. I guess this is the morning of being irked. I was given a goat one time, a wild goat, you know, because the person just went to this game ranch, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, shot this goat and just wanted the head. And the body was there, and the owner of the game ranch was like, hey, do you want this goat? And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to turn down free meat. Goat is an acquired taste, but I like goat. Anyway, this is a game ranch story. And you might think, well, you know, the animal's in a cage, and, you know, you just walk up and you cap it with your Ruger Mini 30 or whatever. No, those also range. In this case, it was wild hogs on a 200+ acre game ranch. So 200 acres is big, and it took us some hours to actually find this, Ben and I. Ben had a compound bow, and I had this mighty little thing. It's a 52-inch Boar recurve, 40 pound, you know, and I showed up at the game ranch, and this is actually, it's been a while, an arrow from the set. It doesn't have a muzzy. I had 2-blade muzzies on this thing, 4 of them. I was armed with 4 arrows and a tiny little bow. Anyway, this fellow that owns the game ranch, Charlie, buys them. They come from the south, and he buys them big, you know, giving people their chance. And it was relatively cheap because not a lot of people would go there to get wild hogs. They would get the other creatures. But I showed up with this, and he was like, you're gonna hunt hogs with that? Where's your rifle? And it's like, no, dude, this is it, little 40-pound Boar recurve. It's about shot placement, not about power. Which I later found out that hog hunting is a little combination of both. They're armored. And so we marched around the swamp and finding where the hogs were. In one of the hogs, the biggest one he bought, 450 pounds, had to be dispatched because it was killing deer. They're not nice animals. In many respects, they remind me of people. And so we found those hogs. And my friend with the compound bow, I don't know, he stayed back because they're tactical. They operate as a group. They use strategy. They're really intelligent animals. Not very nice, you know, on the range of animals. I've always felt bad, you know, there was a part of me that felt very bad when I would take a deer, a squirrel, or a rabbit, like, or something, you know, of that effect. They didn't do me any harm. They were generally, you know, kind of gentle animals. However, I needed the meat. There was a period of my life where I needed to eat that wild meat that I gathered, or else I didn't eat. You know, so that was it. It was me or them. And a natural consequence of being an omnivore. But I did it. You know, I was able to see this creature and either pull the trigger or loose an arrow on him. And it's not about, well, I don't think I can. It's about, you know, you just pull the trigger, so to speak. Well, I found these hogs. My friend Ben was back. I don't know if he was scared of them or not, and I went right down there and, you know, loosed the first arrow, and it was just skimmed the hump and went into a tree. You know, there's probably more muzzies in trees than there are on showroom floors. The second arrow, right through the hump, and it broke down to 2 arrows. The third arrow, in the hogs, there was the one I was going for, the biggest one, and then others were like circling around me, and Ben was on the outside of the circle. The next one, beautiful, right in the side lungs. That should have put him down. If it was a deer, would have run off, you know, and we would have waited for its demise, his or her demise. But it didn't. After I shot him in the lungs, he turned and charged me. And so I had 1 arrow left, And I waited till he was probably about 5 or 6 feet away, because one arrow, hog charging me, all the rest circling around. I waited until he was so close, there was absolutely no way, you know, that I'd missed. So 5 or 6 feet away, let it fly straight into the chest, which you would think on any normal animal, if it wasn't a hog, would have been down, you know, with long shots. It was a beautiful long shot, and then one right center of the chest. Well, he ran off behind the line of hogs, and this is a circle, and they're getting closer, circling around me. This is why this is a great hunting story. And so I'm down on the ground, and I grabbed the front of the one that broke when it went through his hump. So I've got like half an arrow there. And then went over to the tree and then pulled that arrow out, and the muzzy stayed in the tree. So I was left with this and a broken arrow. And so I pulled out my K-bar, and it took the arrow, I kind of had to fit it. I forgot why I needed to do it and not just plug it out. Maybe I used a K-bar to knock the arrowhead off, the muzzy off the one that was broken, and then stuck the arrowhead from the broken one. I had one from the tree that was fallen, and the arrowhead from the broken one, tapped it on the tip with my K-bar, and as soon as I held up the arrow and said, "Yeah, I'm armed," you know, literally, "I'm armed," and stood up with my bow and the single arrow, the hogs ran off. They know, they're smart. And so Ben and I, he had his compound bow, and I had this little thing with my single arrow, are marching through, and it was this area of some kind of grass or something like that. And every so often, it was like the boogans. I don't know if it's like the boogans, it's a good description. We're walking through the grass, and every so often, we would see the grass moving like this next to us, and these big black things running right by our legs. Well, like, Ben, I need to go up to the truck and get some more arrows. And you need to get, like, your spear, because he knows how to forge things, you know, a metal worker, just a brilliant guy. Grabbed the spear. And then we went to the owner of the game ranch and said, "Hey, can we borrow a dog to track the hogs?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can use Nike." And Nike was this hound that was ripped stem to stern with a hog tusk, you know, almost died, but healed. And so picture this, Ben and I'm in the front, well, Nike is in the front, and I'm behind Nike, and Ben is behind me with the spear. I don't care. I'm a little crazy that way. You know, I get this thing in my head. I stand my ground. And so, you know, walking through the swamp, and these things are really of no use, because by the time they pop out of the grass at your feet, you'd be done for. But Nike would be, you know, leading us through, sniffing along for the hog tracks. But when they would get close, Nike would get between us in like cover, because Nike was scared of hogs. We managed to get him at the edge then, and the one that was wounded was putting up a fight still. This was like 3 hours after a long shot. These things are tough. I don't think they need blood or air to survive. I circle around him, and Ben has a spear, and Ben is sitting here like fighting this wounded hog off. It's a big thing, between 250 and 300 pounds, fighting this hog off. And I'm like, "Ben, dude, shouldn't you have the pointy end of the spear towards the hog?" And he wasn't able to like spin it and get the spear point. He probably didn't have the precaution to, like, you know, stab into something. Circled around, heart shot. I mean, at point blank, just boing, while he's fighting the hog, boing. Well, the conclusion to the story is, we put the hog in a truck came around, put the hog in the back of it. Nike jumped up there, and this is what Nike thinks of hogs after he almost died. He was like chewing on the hog's male parts. And that's about it. And I don't know what the point of this is, just that this is a special little bow to me. I traded this for a blunderbuss of all things when I was like 14. So I've had this bow the greater portion of my life, and it really is a testament to Fred Bear. You know, this was made in northern Michigan. You know, how this is still a beautiful little bow. That's about it. You know, the next time you see this, this is going to have the raven pattern on it. Now, for those of you, and there are a few out there, we all have different philosophies on things, that don't think that bows should be painted. And I've heard that in my comments, and, you know, it doesn't bug me any, you know. As far as that goes, whether or not bows should be painted or not, you know, we could be on the same page on a lot of issues. But I tend to think of it as, and I need to be careful how I'm phrasing this, because I don't want people to suddenly think that, like, he's a witch. In the greatest sense, I don't consider myself a witch. I'm just throwing that out there. But in the greatest sense, you're taking something and you're putting literally your energy into it. And by painting it, you're putting not only your physical energy, but you're putting your thought process into it. And you're marking it. And in many ways, that helps. If you have something that seems to give you a little bit of extra power, let's say, and then, again, I don't know really what that means. Concentration, a little more bravery, a little more steadiness when you're looking at something you don't necessarily want to kill, but you have to. You know, more power to you. And again, it would look better hanging on your wall. With that, I better drink my second cup of coffee. I might suggest, after this video, Ted Nugent, Fred Bear. 'Tis the season. Yeah, proud of this little bugger.